the Human Rights Commission hearing today testimony from the former Minister of Defence after earlier hearing testimony from the National Police Commissioner, Sithole, about the criticism that they've seen and about the violence which occurred in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng 2 months ago. There's been a lot of criticism for the police and the South African National Defence Force amid claims that they simply were not present during the violence. You've seen some of the questions around that. Crispin Hemson is the director at the International Centre for Non-Violence. He's at the Durban University of Technology. Crispin, good afternoon to you. This has been a key question, I think, during the violence, the period after the violence. Where were the police? Where were the South African National Defence Force during this time? It would seem to me that there are a lot of questions for them both to answer.
Yeah, there's a strange absence. I mean, those of us here at the time were like feeling lost. There was an absence of leadership. This was like a very disturbing, and not knowing that we could call on the police, that certainly the military we didn't expect to be initially, but a lot of questions remain unanswered, and I didn't get very much clarity from Mr. Sithole today.
I mean, there is a question about if they had been on the ground, if police officers had been on the ground, what could they have done? And hanging over all of that, I've always thought through all of this, is the Marikana massacre. Could things have been made worse if the police were there? But I have a hard time believing that it could have. I mean, I would argue the police, had a duty to be there.
They had a duty to be there, and I think they had a duty to be supported by the people had a duty to support the police, and the police had a duty to be carrying out the law and enforcing the law. And the sense of failure around authority, benign authority. I heard Barney Pachana saying, where is the state in all of this? Why is the state in such a weak position that it cannot exert its benign authority when we desperately needed that benign authority? And I think various people felt that they were sort of thrown to the dogs in a sense. In fact, there's not one community that I know of that didn't have that feeling of being abandoned.
So the situation then is, I mean, there's the abandonment, there's the idea that, and Commissioner Sithole suggested this, that there was a lack of police resources. I mean, do you buy that as an explanation?
What is the thinking? I mean, here's the absurdity of us. We're still dealing with the arms deal. You remember the arms deal? Okay. What did the arms deal ever do for us here in KZN? What did it ever do? All of those billions. And now they say there's lack of resources. I have a colleague, actually, who's going to do a cost and benefit analysis of that arms deal. We're still paying for it, but we cannot find the money to pay for the most basic and fundamental policing, guarding of communities.
I suppose the question is what would have happened if the police were on the ground. And the argument would go, they would have done what police are supposed to do. They would have made communities feel safer. And they might, considering how many people died, they might have ended up saving a lot of lives.
If only there'd been a positive police presence in certain areas, but there still are problems. I mean, one of the most significant testimonies came from Rashan Jainath, who is, a very ethical person in Pietermaritzburg, and he referred to criminal elements in the police who were part of the killings. So that is a very serious allegation. I don't think it's true of the bulk of the police by any means, not at all. But the possibility of one form or another form of criminality within the police services is very troubling.
In the absence of a proper explanation from the police commissioner, from the former defence minister, what's going to happen? There will be a vacuum, and people will fill it perhaps with conspiracy theories. They will say it was this, they'll say it was that, they'll say it was politics, they'll say it was criminalised policing.
Yeah, look, the vacuum that's created is interesting because, in fact, people did things. People felt they had to do things. And they either did things which were noble or they did things which intensified the criminality. And, I mean, I was very interested reading, my students were writing an assignment about leadership during that period. And it was so interesting what they identified as good leadership and bad leadership. This would include students who, in fact, themselves admitted to having looted. Everyone agreed that in the end, looting was the most terrible idea, that it was without any justification at all, and it should have been stopped as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Crispin Hemson, thanks very much indeed. Director at the International Centre for Non-Violence at the Durban University of Technology. I do appreciate the time. There's a lot more to talk about coming out of those Human Rights Commission hearings in KwaZulu-Natal.